My sister took my husband when I was in labor. After 3 years, she sent me a message asking for $5,000 to cover his gambling debts. A few days later, at a family barbecue, her son whispered to me, "Mom told me you were the evil one." It all started almost 4 years ago. At the time, I was heavily pregnant and juggling work and high-risk prenatal appointments. Caleb, my husband, had been increasingly absent, working late hours, always helping friends, always just a little too evasive. I wanted to believe the best of him. We'd been married for 3 years. We weren't perfect, but we were building a life. We had a house in Columbia, Missouri, with a backyard and a nursery painted pale yellow. We were going to be parents. Brielle, my younger sister, had recently moved back to town after a failed relationship in Chicago. She was always the firecracker in our family. Gorgeous, sharp-tongued, unpredictable. She'd bounced from job to job, city to city. My parents often bailed her out, financially and emotionally. Still, I felt for her. She was family. I invited her over often. She'd babysit our dog. Sometimes she'd drop off groceries when I was too swollen and sore to move around much. Looking back, the signs were there. The way her laugh lingered too long when Caleb cracked a joke. The way he'd go quiet when I walked into the room mid-conversation. How suddenly she started showing up without calling first. I saw it. I just didn't want to believe it. Then the day I went into labor came, and everything changed. Caleb didn't answer when I first called. I was in pain, scared, alone. My neighbor, Valerie, drove me to the hospital while I tried reaching him again and again. When he finally showed up, nearly 2 hours later, he smelled faintly of aftershave and something else I couldn't place at the time. I chalked it up to nerves. Stress. I gave birth to our son, Jonah, that night. He held the baby. Kissed my forehead. Told me how beautiful I was. Lied to my face. A few months later, the fractures deepened. Caleb was gone more often. He stopped coming to Jonah's pediatrician visits. Stopped asking about milestones. I was home alone with a colicky infant most days, barely holding it together. I found myself crying in the shower, crying while making bottles, crying while folding laundry. Caleb dismissed it all. "You're hormonal," he said. "You're making problems where there aren't any." One day, I found a necklace tucked in the glove box of our car. A dainty gold chain with a charm I'd never seen before. It wasn't mine. When I asked him, he said it belonged to one of his patients. A mix-up. The real answer didn't come until I borrowed his laptop to pay a utility bill and his email account was still open. There they were, messages from Brielle. Some recent. Some dating back months. Explicit. Intimate. Cruel. She mocked me. He replied with crude inside jokes. I was a cold fish, a dead bedroom, too wrapped up in being a mom to be a wife. The betrayal cracked me open. I printed the emails. Left them in a folder on his nightstand. Packed a bag and took Jonah to my parents' place. I didn't confront Brielle. I didn't scream or throw things. I didn't have the energy. My parents were horrified. My mother cried. My dad, always a man of few words, told Caleb never to come near me or Jonah again. But Brielle? She moved in with Caleb 3 weeks later. Like it was the most natural thing in the world. 3 years passed. I got full custody of Jonah. Caleb didn't fight it, probably because he didn't want to pay child support. Or maybe because he knew he wouldn't win. He spiraled into gambling and debt. I heard through mutual acquaintances that he had been fired from 2 jobs. Brielle tried starting a YouTube channel about single mom empowerment, but it fizzled after a few months. She had another baby, Levi. I went back to work. Slowly built myself up again. I started therapy. I found a rhythm. Life didn't get easier, but I got stronger. Until that message. I read it a dozen times. It's not about me. It's about the kids. You've always had more than enough. Please, if you could just lend it. I felt like I was being dragged back into a pit I'd barely crawled out of. I didn't respond. 2 days later, my mother begged me to come to a family barbecue for Jonah's birthday. Brielle won't be there, she promised. Just your cousins and some neighbors. But of course she came. She walked in with Levi on her hip like nothing had happened. Smiling. Saying hi to people like we were a normal family. I ignored her. I focused on Jonah. He was happy, playing tag with his cousins, his face sticky with lemonade. I was sitting on the back porch when Levi wandered over, his big brown eyes innocent and confused. Are you the mean aunt? He asked. I blinked. What do you mean? He whispered, Mom says you're the evil one. There was no malice in his voice. No judgment. Just a quiet curiosity. I swallowed the lump in my throat. No, sweetie, I said, managing a smile. I'm not. He nodded and ran off. And I just sat there. No explosion. No confrontation. Just that whisper echoing in my head like a gunshot. I stayed on that porch for a long time, the sounds of laughter and clinking glasses drifting through the open patio door. Inside, someone had started singing Happy Birthday. Jonah's little voice rang out in excitement. But I couldn't move. Levi's words stirred something I hadn't let myself feel in a long time, grief. Not for Caleb. That bridge was burned. But for my sister. For the person I once believed would be my closest ally in life. The one who used to braid my hair before school and sneak snacks into my backpack. The one I called after every breakup, every disappointment. I grieved her like she was dead. Because in many ways, she was. Eventually, I stood, brushed off my jeans, and went inside. I hugged Jonah tightly, kissed the top of his head, and thanked my parents. I didn't even glance in Brielle's direction as I gathered our things. If she noticed, she didn't say anything. Maybe she was too busy pretending that the air between us wasn't thick with everything unspoken. In the car, Jonah babbled about cake and balloons. I smiled and nodded, but my mind was spinning. That night, after he was asleep, I sat at my kitchen table and reread the message she had sent. It's not about me. It's about the kids. Kids. Plural. Like Jonah was hers. Like Caleb hadn't opted out of fatherhood the moment it got difficult. Like Brielle hadn't chosen to raise her son with the man who walked out on mine. I wanted to scream. Not because I was angry, I had moved past anger, but because I had carried the weight of their choices for so long. While they stumbled from one mesh to another, I had been the one holding steady. I had raised my son without help, worked night shifts to keep our house, gone to therapy, and kept our life afloat. And now she wanted to dip her hand back in, pull out whatever scraps she thought I owed her? No. A few days later, I found out she had sent the same message, copy-paste, to two of our cousins. One ignored it. The other replied, "Have you asked your boyfriend?" and got blocked. Classic Brielle. She'd done this before, of course. Manipulated people. Rewritten history. It was easier for her to be the victim. To paint me as cold, unforgiving, selfish. Because if I was the villain, she didn't have to be accountable. My mother called the following week. She's upset, she said gently. She feels judged. I let out a laugh I didn't mean to. Judged? She told her 5-year-old I'm evil. She didn't mean it like that, Mom said, too quickly. He's just a kid. Kids say things. They repeat what they hear. There was a long silence on the other end. My parents have always tried to keep the peace, often at the cost of actual fairness. They're from a generation where keeping the family intact mattered more than confronting uncomfortable truths. But I wasn't interested in keeping up appearances anymore. I'm not going to play pretend for her comfort, I said. I'm not angry anymore. But I'm done. My mom didn't argue. Not this time. A week later, I got a handwritten letter in the mail. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting right away. I know you think I'm the worst person in the world. Maybe I am. But I didn't mean for it to happen like that. Caleb and it just happened. We didn't plan to hurt you. I miss you. I miss us. I'm not asking for forgiveness, but maybe you could think about helping us. Levi deserves better. Please. I put the letter in a drawer and didn't answer. Not because I didn't have anything to say, but because I had too much to say, and none of it would land where it needed to. Brielle wasn't writing to repair anything. She wanted money. She wanted relief. She wanted to ease the burden she'd willingly picked up. And she wanted me to carry part of it. But the thing is, I've spent the last few years learning how to carry only what belongs to me. My son. My life. My truth. Jonah knows nothing of the mess that created his little life. All he knows is that his mom loves him fiercely. That he is safe. That he is wanted. And that is enough. At least, I try to remind myself it is. Even when the hurt lingers like smoke in a house that's long since burned down. Even when the people who set the fire act like they don't remember lighting the match. The following month passed quietly, which was a relief. No new messages. No surprise visits. I let myself believe the storm had passed, that maybe, finally, Brielle had accepted the silence for what it was, a boundary. Jonah was thriving in school. His teacher, Mrs. Kessler, said he was inquisitive and kind. He had a thing for puzzles and had recently decided he wanted to be an animal doctor/space explorer. He said it like it was one job, not two. I clung to those moments. They reminded me what mattered. Then came my father's birthday. Another family gathering. I debated not going, but Jonah was excited, and I knew it would mean a lot to my dad. So I baked his favorite, chocolate bundt cake with orange zest, and arrived early to help set up. Brielle walked in an hour later, Levi trailing behind her. She didn't look at me. I didn't look at her. We stayed in opposite corners most of the evening. She laughed too loudly. I sipped my wine and kept a small talk with the cousins. Levi and Jonah played in the living room under my mother's watchful eye. At one point, while refilling the chip bowl in the kitchen, I heard my name. I paused just outside the doorway. My mom and Brielle were talking in lowered voices, but not quite enough. She could help, Brielle was saying. She just won't. She acts like she's better than me. She's been through a lot, honey, my mom said gently. And I haven't? Caleb left me too, you know. I'm raising Levi by myself. I leaned against the hallway wall, heart thudding. Things got messy, Brielle continued. But I didn't do it to hurt her. It just happened. And she's not perfect either. She always had this way of making me feel small. Like she was the one who had it all figured out. I backed away before I heard more. That night, I lay awake thinking about what she said. About how pain twists people, how they rewrite their own actions to fit the narrative they need. Brielle needed to believe I was cold, superior, withholding. Because if I wasn't, then she was just cruel. And I don't think she could live with that. The next week, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. Hey, it's Caleb. Don't hang up, just hear me out. I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from, but Brielle's been going through it. Things are bad. I screwed up, alright? I'm trying to get help. I just thought maybe you'd want to know. He didn't ask for money. Didn't offer an apology. It was just vague enough to feel like bait. I didn't call back. What struck me more than anything was that he'd contacted me at all. It meant they'd run out of options. That whatever grip Brielle thought she had on controlling the narrative, it was slipping. The next time I saw Levi, it was unplanned. My mother was watching him one weekend while Brielle handled some things, and she brought him with her when she came by to drop off a casserole. Jonah was thrilled. The two boys played together like cousins do, like none of the adult chaos touched them. At one point, Levi wandered into the kitchen where I was loading dishes and stood silently for a moment. Then he said, "My dad's sick." I looked at him, gently. "Is he?" He nodded. "Mom says he broke his brain with gambling." I didn't correct him. I didn't say anything at all. "I like Jonah's room," he added, staring down at his feet. "It's really clean." "Mine's not." "You can come play anytime," I said, without thinking. "As long as it's okay with your mom." He smiled and ran off. That small interaction stayed with me long after they left. It wasn't Levi's fault. None of it was. He was just a kid, caught in a mess created by adults who hadn't protected him the way they should have. I didn't feel anger anymore, not toward him. Not even toward Brielle at that moment. What I felt was exhaustion. A deep, soul-level weariness from years of carrying wounds that kept getting poked open. The next day, Brielle texted me. "Thanks for being nice to him. He talks about Jonah all the time. No request for money this time. No emotional manipulation. Just a thank you." I didn't respond. Not because I was being spiteful, but because I didn't want to encourage anything else. I didn't want her to mistake kindness toward Levi as an open door. I discussed it with my therapist later that week. Her response surprised me. "Sometimes," she said, "it's okay to allow soft moments without opening the floodgates. You can care about your nephew without inviting chaos back in." It helped. It reminded me that boundaries aren't about punishment. They're about self-preservation. Still, it didn't stop the creeping anxiety that came every time my phone lit up with an unknown number. Or the quiet dread that lingered whenever family gatherings were mentioned. There was no escaping the web entirely. Not when Jonah and Levi shared blood. Not when my parents kept trying to heal a wound that never got the stitches it needed. But I could stay on my side of it. I could keep showing up for Jonah, for myself, and maybe, in small ways, for Levi, without letting Brielle back into the center of my life. Even if she kept circling the edges, looking for a way in. A few weeks after that quiet exchange with Levi, something shifted. Not dramatically, not all at once, but in the small ways that begin to rearrange your sense of balance without you realizing it until later. Levi started showing up more. Not with Brielle, never with her, but with my mother, who had quietly taken on more of a caretaker role than I think even she realized. Brielle's errands and appointments started becoming full-day disappearances, sometimes stretching overnight. She'd drop Levi off with a quick text, "Can you take him for a bit?" and vanish. At first, my mom tried to shield me from it. She knew where my boundaries were, and she respected them. But when Jonah began asking if Levi could come over to play, and I didn't see any harm in that, I gave a soft yes. Under specific conditions. I wasn't about to start co-parenting my sister's child, but Jonah adored his cousin. And I wasn't made of stone. Levi was polite. Quiet, in a way that was different from Jonah's naturally curious energy. He seemed to carry a sort of caution that didn't belong to a 5-year-old. He asked before touching things. He cleaned up without being told. And more than once, I noticed him glance toward the door whenever he heard a car pull up, as if waiting for someone who might not come. It hit me harder than I wanted it to. During one of those playdates, I overheard the boys talking in Jonah's room. I hadn't meant to eavesdrop, but I was folding laundry in the hallway and their voices drifted out through the half-open door. "My mommy says she's tired a lot," Levi said. "Mine too," Jonah replied. "But she's not grumpy." "Are you grumpy?" Levi was quiet for a beat. "Sometimes she cries when she thinks I'm asleep." I stopped folding. My hands froze on a little sock. There it was again, that old, familiar ache of helplessness. The same one I felt when I was the one crying in secret, when I was the one trying to hold it all together while feeling like I was unraveling from the inside. I knew that version of exhaustion intimately. It didn't justify anything Brielle had done, but it made it harder to hold on to the clean, sharp lines of anger I'd once clung to. Life was messy. People were messy. And pain didn't excuse cruelty, but it explained how someone could drown in it and pull others under without meaning to. Still, I wasn't reaching out. I had no desire to reopen old wounds. But then came the night my mother called me, her voice trembling. She left him, she said, flat out. She took a bag and left Levi with me. No note. No message. Just a text saying she needed a break. How long ago? 2 days. I closed my eyes, rubbed my temples. She's not answering calls, my mom went on. Not mine, not Levi's. Nothing. I don't know where she is. I didn't have an answer. And I didn't offer one. All I could think was, of course she did. Later that evening, I sat on the edge of the bathtub while Jonah brushed his teeth, staring blankly at the tiles. My mind raced. What was I supposed to do? Call the police? File a report? Wait. This wasn't some teenager flaking out on babysitting duties. This was a mother abandoning her child. Jonah looked up at me through the mirror, phone clinging to his chin. Are you mad? He asked, mouth full of toothpaste. No, sweetie, I said. Just thinking. Is Levi gonna live with us now? I blinked. What? Why do you say that? He said his mom is gone. That your house is nicer anyway. The simplicity of it, the child logic of it, cut right through me. That night, I called my mom again. She sounded more frantic this time. She's never done this before, she said. Not like this. I don't know if she's okay. I'm scared. I knew she was talking about Brielle. But I couldn't help thinking about Levi, curled up on the pull-out couch in my parents' basement, probably listening for the door. Wondering when, or if, his mother would come back. The next morning, I packed Jonah's overnight bag and dropped him off at his best friend's house. Then I drove to my parents' place. Levi ran to me when I walked in, clutching a plush dinosaur in his arms. Auntie, he said, hugging my legs. I didn't know you were coming. I knelt down to his level. I wanted to see how you were doing, buddy. He shrugged. I'm okay. I miss Mommy. I nodded. I know. That night, I stayed for dinner. My dad, never one to insert himself into conflict, watched me with a kind of cautious gratitude. My mom looked exhausted. She hasn't responded to anything, she said over the sink. Texts, emails, nothing. I even messaged one of her old coworkers. No one's seen her. I looked at Levi, who was drawing spaceships at the dining table. Maybe she'll come back tomorrow, he said hopefully. I didn't know how to respond. I didn't want to lie to him. So I said nothing. The following day, the first call came. From a number in Kansas City. It was Brielle. My mom answered, but I could hear her from the other room. No, Brielle, you cannot disappear like this. You have a son. You don't get to just vanish. A pause. I don't care what you're going through. You're a mother. You don't get a timeout. Another pause. Then, quietly, your sister is here, you know. She came over. She's with Levi. There was a long silence before my mom handed me the phone. I hesitated. Then I took it. Hello? Her voice was tired. Slurred, almost. I didn't know who else to call. You didn't call, I said. You left your son and disappeared. I just needed to breathe, she said. Everything was falling apart. Caleb left again. He took money from me, from Levi's savings. I didn't know what to do. You leave your job. You leave a bad date. You don't leave your child. I knew he was safe with Mom, she said quietly. And with you. My stomach turned. You don't get to put this on me, Brielle. I'm not, she said. I swear I'm not. I waited. I'm in trouble, she added, almost in a whisper. Like, real trouble. What kind of trouble? I can't say. Not over the phone. I said nothing. Just listened to her breathing. I didn't call to ask for anything, she added. Not money. Not a favor. I wanted you to know I'm trying. I nearly laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was just so absurdly familiar. She was always trying. Trying to change. Trying to do better. Trying to make amends. Always trying. Never doing. I didn't respond to her last words. I just listened, the silence between us widening into something too vast to cross. Eventually, she hung up. I didn't call back. But something had shifted. It wasn't just the same old guilt-laced chaos Brielle always stirred up, it was deeper. A kind of bottoming out I hadn't heard in her voice before. Still, I had my limits. And while I wasn't going to step in as her savior, I was going to protect Levi. Over the next few days, I rearranged my schedule to help my parents with him. Jonah was thrilled, they got along so well it was as if they'd always been raised together. Levi started opening up more, less guarded. He told me little things, how his mom slept a lot, how she forgot to pick him up from daycare sometimes, how he didn't always have breakfast at home. It crushed me. Not because I felt bad for Brielle, but because Levi never chose any of this. I documented everything, text messages, voicemails, what Levi said. I made notes with dates and times. I kept records. I wasn't sure what I'd do with them, yet, but I knew I'd need them. A week later, Brielle showed up. Unannounced. Mid-afternoon. Hair pulled into a messy bun, sunglasses covering her face, wearing a hoodie despite the warm Missouri spring. She looked thin. Haggard. An echo of the fiery sister I once knew. I was on my parents' porch, sipping a coffee while the boys played in the backyard. She walked up and said, flatly, I'm here for Levi. I stood up slowly. You can't just disappear for 10 days and expect to walk back in like nothing happened. I had things to figure out, she said. He's my son. Then you should have acted like it. Her jaw clenched. Don't start with me. I'm not starting anything. I'm finishing it. She glanced past me, toward the backyard. He doesn't belong to you. No. He belongs somewhere safe. And right now, that's not with you. Are you seriously trying to take him from me? No, I said, coolly. But someone's going to. You're not stable. You abandoned him. My mom had to call your job and lie to your boss just to keep them from firing you. You've been gone. You have no plan, no explanation. Do you even know what he eats for breakfast? She looked away. I didn't come to fight, she muttered. I just want to take my son and go. Where? She said nothing. I thought so, I replied. She turned on her heel and walked back to her car, slamming the door so hard it startled the boys in the backyard. I went back inside and made a call to an attorney. It took 2 months to build the case. I didn't file for custody myself, that wasn't the plan. But I worked with my parents to get temporary guardianship assigned to them. They were more than willing. They'd raised us. They were still relatively young. And I knew they'd give Levi the structure and stability he deserved. We gathered everything, the abandonment, the text messages, her failure to provide. My mom's detailed notes. My own timeline of events. Even a letter from Jonah's school counselor explaining how Levi's emotional well-being had improved while under their care. When Brielle was served the papers, she didn't fight it. At first. Then, 3 weeks later, she sent a scathing email, you always wanted to be the good one. The perfect daughter. Well, congrats. You got what you wanted. Hope you're proud. You stole my son. I didn't respond. Not this time. Because her words didn't sting anymore. What came next wasn't what she expected. I didn't just let the situation simmer, I used it. I got in touch with a local journalist. A woman I'd met through a friend of a friend, who had a podcast on family systems, addiction, and parental neglect. She featured real stories, anonymized just enough to protect identities but raw enough to shake listeners. I told her mine. She didn't just publish it, she built an entire episode around it. The betrayed sister. The addict husband. The woman who rebuilt her life, only to be drawn back in by a child caught in the crossfire. No names. No locations. But the story spread. And I knew Brielle would hear it eventually. And she did. She messaged me from another burner account, something she'd done before, when blocked. "You're so full of yourself. Painting me like some villain. Do you even remember how awful you were when we were kids?" That was always her fallback, rewrite history. Focus on childhood flights to excuse present behavior. I ignored it. She kept posting cryptic things online. Attention-seeking rants on Facebook under a new profile. Vague statuses like "it's always the strong ones that ruin families," or "some people just love to play the victim." I didn't bite. Eventually, her posts turned into long, self-pitying screeds. About how she'd lost everything. How people turned on her. She still wouldn't take accountability. But the people around her, mutual acquaintances, extended family, weren't fooled anymore. They had seen enough. And Levi? He thrived. My parents put him in a structured school program. He started therapy. He began sleeping better, eating better, laughing more. He stopped waiting by the door. He stopped asking when his mom was coming back. One evening, after Jonah's soccer game, the two boys were in the back seat, munching on snacks. "Hey," Levi said, between bites. "Your mom's my aunt, right?" "Yeah," Jonah said, like it was obvious. "She's way better than mine." I glanced at them through the rearview mirror, a lump catching in my throat. "You don't have to say that," I said gently. "I know," Levi shrugged. "But it's true." Brielle moved out of state later that year. Arizona, I think. Someone said she was living with a guy she met in a rehab group. She doesn't call anymore. She doesn't write. Every few months, she posts something cryptic about forgiveness and growth, but nothing changes. Nothing real, anyway. And me? I didn't get revenge by destroying her. I got it by surviving her. By thriving in spite of her. By making a life so solid, so loving, so full of light, that there was no room for her shadow anymore. I didn't take Levi away from her. She gave him away. I just made sure he landed somewhere safe. And that's something she'll have to live with. Every day.